The morning felt like it had been plucked from a dream. Sunlight spilled through the sheer curtains of my bridal suite, casting a golden hue on everything it touched. I stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. My dress fit like a whisper, delicate lace brushing against my skin. The venue was everything I'd ever imagined. Soft lights, white peonies, elegant music floating in the air. And today, I was going to marry the man I thought I'd spend forever with. David. Just thinking his name made my heart flutter. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the nerves that danced in my stomach. Not from doubt, no. Just the kind of butterflies you get when everything you've hoped for is finally happening. My vows were folded neatly in my clutch, words I'd written with trembling hands and a full heart. This was it, my moment. And by my side, as always, was Rachel, my sister, my anchor. She looked beautiful too, adjusting my veil like she'd done it 1,000 times. We laughed about old memories, and for a second I felt weightless, like nothing could touch me. Downstairs I could hear the soft hum of excitement, guests arriving, champagne flowing, music warming up. The whole place buzzed with joy. I peeked through the window and saw friends embracing, family toasting, little kids twirling in dress shoes. Everything looked perfect. Everything felt perfect. And as I gripped the bouquet tighter, ready to walk into this new chapter, I had no idea that something was already unraveling behind the scenes. As I made my way toward the ceremony space, the scent of roses mixed with the soft hum of a string quartet wrapped around me like a warm embrace. Every step I took felt surreal. My father met me halfway, eyes a little misty, smiled trembling just enough to make my own eyes sting. He squeezed my hand without saying a word. He didn't have to. That squeeze said everything: pride, love, and maybe even a little bit of letting go. I leaned into it, feeling grounded for just a moment. Then I saw David, standing at the altar, straightening his cufflinks the way he always did when he was nervous. He looked handsome, of course, but more than that, he looked like home. Like every plan we made, every night we dreamed aloud, every quiet coffee in the morning, they were all leading to this. He caught my eye and smiled. Not big, not flashy. Just that soft, knowing smile that had once made me believe we could weather anything. My heart felt full to the point of bursting. The ceremony itself? A blur of smiles, tears, and words that meant more than they sounded. We said our vows, sealed it with a kiss, and the crowd erupted into cheers. It felt like joy was stitched into the air. Rachel was right beside me the whole time, handing me tissues, fixing my train, whispering sweet little reminders to breathe and soak it all in. And I did. I soaked in every second, because in that moment, I believed I had it all. But looking back now, I wish I'd paid more attention to the shadows behind the smiles. The reception kicked off like a dream you don't want to wake up from. People laughed like they hadn't in years. Music filled every corner of the room, and champagne flowed like celebration itself. Everywhere I looked, there were people I loved, clinking glasses, telling stories, dancing without shame. I felt wrapped in a bubble of warmth and wonder, floating through the evening on clouds made of joy. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about tomorrow. I was exactly where I wanted to be. Rachel delivered her maid of honor speech with ease. She spoke about childhood memories, about the closeness we shared, about how she'd always seen David and me as soulmates. People dabbed tears from their eyes, and I smiled through mine. Her words meant the world to me, because she knew me better than anyone, or so I thought. When she raised her glass and looked at me with that glowing, sisterly pride, I believed every word. I held on to it. I needed it to be real. At one point, I stood off to the side, just watching it all. Watching the people I loved celebrate what I thought was love. And then, just for a second, I noticed something. A flicker. A glance between Rachel and David. It was brief, but it didn't belong. Not in a moment like this. Something shifted inside me, barely perceptible at first, like a thread pulling loose in a perfect tapestry. I shook it off. I told myself I was imagining things. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "Not everything is as it seems." I tried to stay in the moment. Really, I did. I danced, I smiled, I hugged people I hadn't seen in years. But that flicker I saw between Rachel and David, it wouldn't leave me. It lingered like a faint stain on white silk, small enough to ignore, but impossible to forget. Every time I looked over, I caught myself scanning the room for them. They were there, mingling, laughing, blending in with the crowd. But something in my gut told me to pay attention. Then came the moment that changed everything. David had vanished from the dance floor, which didn't seem strange at first. He was probably catching a break, talking to someone, refilling his drink. But when Rachel also disappeared a few minutes later, my stomach clenched. It was subtle, the way they both slipped away, but too close in time to be coincidence. I glanced around, trying not to panic, trying not to create a scene over what could have been nothing. But nothing had never felt so loud. I stepped outside for air, gripping the railing with both hands, breathing deep. The night was cooler now, the laughter behind me muffled by glass. That's when I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there she was. Jessica, one of my bridesmaids, someone I'd known since college. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with hesitation. "Anna, I didn't know if I should show you this," she said, voice trembling. My heart stopped. She pulled out her phone, and what I saw made my world tilt sideways. It was a photo. Blurry, yes, but unmistakable. David's hand on Rachel's lower back, her face turned toward his in a way no sister-in-law ever should. The timestamp? That morning. The same morning I was getting my makeup done. The same morning I'd called Rachel in to zip my dress. My throat went dry. I stared at the screen, waiting for my brain to come up with some explanation that could make this okay. But nothing came. Just the crushing weight of betrayal crashing into my chest like a freight train. Jessica looked at me like she was afraid I'd shatter right there. I thought maybe it was old, but the nail polish she's wearing, it's the same as today. I noticed it when she gave the toast. My eyes locked onto the screen again. I felt like I was standing outside of my own life, watching someone else's tragedy play out. My sister, my husband, today of all days. My wedding wasn't even over yet, and it was already a lie. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, frozen, while the music and laughter drifted out from the ballroom behind me like background noise from a different world. My hands were shaking, but my mind? Sharp. Laser-focused. In that moment, I didn't crumble. I calculated. I saw everything so clearly. If this was going to be the worst day of my life, then they were going to feel it too. I wasn't going to let this betrayal be whispered about in corners. I was going to put it on center stage. I walked back inside like I was sleepwalking, but every step was deliberate. The room hadn't changed. The music still played, glasses still clinked, and people still smiled like nothing had happened. I moved through them, nodding, pretending, performing. But inside, I was rewriting everything. Every memory of David's kisses, Rachel's pep talks, every shared dinner, every inside joke, it all curdled. And suddenly, I wasn't the heartbroken bride anymore. I was something else. I was awake. Back in the bridal suite, I locked the door behind me. The air felt thick with perfume and lies. I stared at myself in the mirror, still in my gown, hair still pinned, makeup still flawless, on the outside. But my eyes, they'd seen too much. I wiped away the fake smile and replaced it with war paint, touched up my lipstick, pressed powder to my cheeks, and fixed every strand of hair that dared fall out of place. If I was going back out there, I was going in with my chin up and my heart armored. There was no breakdown, no sobbing into a veil, just one clear decision. This day would still be remembered, but for reasons no one expected. I tucked the phone into my clutch, along with the truth it carried. I smoothed the fabric of my dress, walked to the door, and placed my hand on the handle. The celebration wasn't over yet. Not until I gave them something to really toast to. When I stepped back into that ballroom, it felt like stepping onto a stage. No one noticed at first. Just another moment in the blur of a wedding reception, until I picked up my glass and tapped it with the silver knife. The sound rang out, sharp and clean. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. The DJ cut the music. And just like that, I had everyone's attention. All those eyes, friends, family, colleagues, looking at me with anticipation, waiting for something sweet and sentimental. I took a breath, my heart thudding in rhythm with the silence. But I didn't tremble. Not anymore. I looked out across the room and found their faces, Rachel's, caught mid-laugh, and David's, already starting to sense something was off. I held my glass up, voice steady. "I want to thank you all for being here today," I began. "It means the world to me to be surrounded by the people I love most." A few smiles, a couple of claps. I let the pause hang, just long enough. Especially my sister, and my husband. Because today, they gave me the greatest wedding gift of all, the truth. Gasps, audible gasps. I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I watched the color drain from David's face and Rachel's mouth fall open like she couldn't decide whether to run or lie. People turned to look at them, eyes wide with confusion, then horror. And still, I kept talking, calm, collected, cold, if I had to be. I wasn't here to plead for sympathy. I was here to hand back the lie they'd given me and let them choke on it. I reached into my clutch and pulled out Jessica's phone. Yes, I asked to borrow it. Evidence needs to be visible. "Some of you may have missed the private pre-wedding celebration my sister and my husband had this morning," I said, holding the screen up high. "Don't worry, I didn't miss it." Gasps turned into murmurs, some hands covering mouths, others grabbing at wine glasses a little too fast. I walked toward the nearest table, placed the phone down, and pressed play. A photo, then another, then another. One guest stood, another peeked over a shoulder. Whispers turned into pointed stares. I could feel the energy shift in waves, confusion turning into disbelief, disbelief hardening into disgust. "I always thought betrayal would feel like fire," I said. "Turns out it feels like silence. Like getting ready for your wedding while the two people you trust most are off creating their own little ceremony without you." Rachel took a step forward. "Anna, wait, this isn't what it looks like." Her voice cracked, hands trembling. I met her eyes, and I swear, for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize her. David didn't say a word. He just stood there, pale, frozen, eyes darting between faces like a child caught stealing. I smiled, just a little. Not out of joy, but out of resolve. "Don't worry," I said. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm free. And you? You're welcome to each other." People were frozen in their seats, blinking, processing. I could see my mother shaking her head in disbelief, my aunt whispering prayers under her breath. A few guests had already stood up and walked out, but I didn't stop. I wasn't finished yet. I picked up my champagne flute again, raised it slowly, and let my voice carry. To love, honesty, and starting over. And to learning that sometimes the best thing you can do is let go of what was never really yours. Then I turned, heels clicking on the floor like punctuation marks, and walked toward the towering wedding cake in the center of the room. It was beautiful, layers of vanilla and raspberry, white frosting sculpted like lace. I leaned close to the mic and said, "Congratulations, you two. You can have each other." I took the cake knife in hand, sliced off the biggest piece I could manage, held it up with a smirk, and added, "I'm keeping the cake." The room erupted. Not in cheers, not in outrage, just a stunned collective moment of awe. People didn't know whether to clap or cry. I didn't care. I walked out with my head held high, the sweetness of raspberry on my tongue, and a strange, unexpected calm settling over me. I had just burned it all down. And somehow, it felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. The moment I stepped outside, the air felt different, sharper, clearer, like I'd walked out of a house full of smoke and finally breathed clean again. I didn't look back, not once. People were calling my name, some in confusion, others maybe out of sympathy, but I just kept walking. There was nothing left for me in that room except broken promises and red wine stains. I got into the car someone had arranged, who I don't even remember, and I shut the door like I was closing a chapter I'd never reread. I didn't cry that night. That surprised me. You'd think after a betrayal like that, after years of building a life, I'd collapse. But there was something strangely empowering about it all. I went home, took off the dress, peeled off the lashes, and stood in front of the mirror again, barefaced, tired but intact. I poured myself a glass of wine, kicked off my heels, and just sat in silence. Not the kind that hurts, the kind that heals, the kind that says, "You survived it. Now what?" The days that followed were chaos. People called, texted, messaged me on social media. Some didn't know what to say. Others said everything. My cousin posted a video from the reception, and it spread faster than I expected. Friends I hadn't heard from in years sent me messages like, "You were incredible, and that took so much strength. I didn't plan to be anyone's inspiration. I just wanted to stop being anyone's fool." I filed for annulment the following week. No hesitation, no back and forth. The paperwork felt cold, clinical. Irreconcilable betrayal wasn't a legal term, but it should have been. David never fought it. He knew. Everyone knew. He didn't reach out, didn't beg, didn't even try to spin the story. Maybe he was too ashamed, or maybe he just knew there was no version of this that could be rewritten. The truth was out, and it had teeth. Rachel didn't vanish like I half expected her to. She stayed, tried to smooth things over with family, but it was like watching someone try to put a shattered vase back together with Scotch tape. My parents were livid. My mother couldn't even look at her. My father said less, but the silence between them spoke volumes. At one point, I overheard him say, "You didn't just betray your sister, Rachel. You embarrassed this entire family." And for once, I didn't feel like I had to defend anyone. Let the consequences come. Their affair fizzled fast. Lust doesn't last when it's exposed to daylight and judgment. I heard through a friend that they stopped seeing each other within a month. No declarations of love, no fairy tale ending. Just two people trying to pretend they hadn't detonated someone else's life for a fling. As for me, I began to breathe again. Not deeply, not all at once, but enough to remember who I was before I started defining myself by someone else's last name. In the quiet that followed, I started building something new. It didn't look dramatic or glamorous. It looked like coffee in the morning without crying. Like walking through the grocery store without feeling like everyone was staring. It looked like slowly learning to laugh again without guilt. I leaned into the people who stood by me. Friends who showed up unannounced with wine and playlists. Family who didn't tiptoe around the topic but held space for my anger and my silence. That kind of support, it saves you. I stopped asking why. I stopped replaying it all in my head. Instead, I began asking myself better questions. What do I want now? Who do I want to be when no one else is writing the script? For years, I dimmed myself to fit into what I thought a good wife looked like. Soft, accommodating, always 2 steps behind David's ambition. But standing in the ruins of that false life, I saw a path I hadn't allowed myself to imagine before. One where I didn't just survive, I created. There's something wild and beautiful about realizing you have nothing left to lose. It frees you. I started drawing again, something I hadn't done since college. I opened an online store. I booked a solo trip. And somewhere in between all that, I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't feel grief or anger. I felt powerful. Like I'd been forged by fire, but I came out gold, not ash. A few months later, I ran into someone at the local farmer's market, an old family friend who had been at the wedding. She stopped mid-step, blinked twice, and said, "Anna, I almost didn't recognize you. You look lighter." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was true. There was something different about the way I stood, the way I moved. I wasn't dragging grief behind me anymore. I was walking forward, finally. She looked at me with that mix of admiration and curiosity people get when they've seen you rise from wreckage. "I'll never forget what you did that night," she said. "I've never seen someone take back their power like that." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Not because I needed validation, but because I hadn't realized just how far I'd come. Back then, I thought I was just surviving. But in truth, I was rewriting my story. Life had become quieter, simpler, but in all the best ways. I started working part-time at a local gallery, pouring my energy into art and storytelling. I met new people, not rushed, not searching, just open. And somewhere in that calm space, something unexpected happened. I met someone kind. Someone who didn't fill a void, but saw me clearly in mine. It was different this time. Slower. Truer. Like building trust brick by brick, not falling into it blind. What surprised me most wasn't falling in love again. It was realizing I didn't need to. I was whole without it. But when it came, it didn't arrive like fireworks or grand gestures. It came quietly. In the way he listened when I spoke. In how he remembered small things, like how I take my tea, or the fact that I always buy fresh flowers on Sundays. There were no masks between us, no stories we had to sell each other, just honesty. Gentle, steady honesty. He never asked me about my past in a way that felt invasive. But he listened when I told him, when I wanted to tell him. And the first time I did, he didn't flinch. He just reached across the table, took my hand and said, "You deserve so much better." And for the first time, I believed it. Fully. Deeply. Without disclaimers or doubt. Not because he said it, but because I'd already started saying it to myself long before he came along. Healing wasn't linear. There were days I still questioned things. Still woke up with the ghost of a memory I hadn't invited. But those days grew fewer, and when they came, I didn't spiral. I breathed through them. I reminded myself of what I'd rebuilt. I looked around at my quiet little life, with its early mornings and paint-streaked aprons, and I thought, this is peace. Not loud, not showy, but mine. Entirely mine. One afternoon, I passed by a bridal boutique downtown, the same one where Rachel and I had once laughed over tulle and tiaras, dreaming about our futures. Inside, a young woman stood on a pedestal in front of a mirror, veil tucked into her curls, beaming. Her friends clapped. Her mother wiped away tears. I paused at the window, watching her spin, so full of hope, and instead of bitterness, I felt warmth. Not because I wanted to be in her shoes, but because I hoped her story would be different. She caught my eye through the glass, and I smiled. Just a soft, knowing smile, the kind that doesn't need to say much but carries 1,000 pages behind it. I hoped she felt it, that quiet wish for her happiness, her safety, her truth. Then I kept walking. No lingering, no heaviness, just forward. People still ask me if I regret it, if I'd take any of it back. And honestly, I wouldn't. Because while it wasn't the wedding I expected, it was the awakening I needed. The day I lost everything was the day I started becoming myself.
Major client pitch. The kind of meeting where your brain's still buzzing from negotiations and numbers. I checked my phone as I was heading out, thinking maybe it was a message from my assistant or a friend. But no, it was from my mom. And all it said was, either give your brother a share of your company and a house, or you're no longer part of this family. I froze right there in the hallway. My heart started pounding like I'd just run a marathon. I stared at that text, waiting for the punchline. But it never came. Just that cold, transactional message, like my worth to them had boiled down to what I could give away. My hands literally went numb. I sank onto the bench near the elevator, blinking at the screen like maybe I'd read it wrong. I hadn't. My own parents were demanding I hand over a piece of the business I'd bled for. And not just a piece, a share for my brother, plus a luxury house. Like I was some sort of bank they could just withdraw from. No call. No conversation, just an ultimatum. After all the years I spent proving myself, working 16-hour days, pouring everything into something no one else believed in, this is what I get. And the worst part? It wasn't even a request. It was a threat. A twisted exchange. Give him what he hasn't earned, or lose us forever. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and yet, beneath the rage, something else crept in. Clarity. This wasn't about love. This was about power. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to take mine back. All I could think about were the years I spent clawing my way up from nothing. I wasn't born into wealth. I wasn't handed a business plan or a safety net. I started with 2 hands, a cheap laptop, and a dream nobody but me took seriously. Not even my parents. I still remember my dad's voice the day I told him I wanted to start my own company. He scoffed, "Nicole, you're not cut out for that kind of life. You need stability, not wild ideas." And my mom? She didn't even respond. Just that tight smile that said, "You'll grow out of this." So I worked. Hard. I took 2 jobs just to keep the lights on while building my dream at night. I missed birthdays, weddings, family vacations. I ate dinner alone in tiny apartments. I cried on bathroom floors when clients ghosted me, when rent was overdue, when nothing was working, but I kept going anyway. I poured everything into this business, my time, my savings, my health. There were nights I didn't sleep, mornings I woke up shaking from anxiety. And through it all, my brother? He was out partying, burning through money, living like life owed him luxury just because he was born with a Y chromosome. No one said a word then. They watched me suffer in silence. They never lifted a hand, never offered help. But now that I've built something strong, stable, and thriving, they want to waltz in and give a chunk of it to the golden boy who never even showed up? My brother never lifted a single finger for me. Not once. And now my parents are acting like it's my duty to reward his laziness with everything I've earned? It wasn't just insulting. It was heartbreaking. And for the first time, I stopped asking why they didn't support me. I started asking why I kept letting them treat me like I didn't matter. Growing up, I learned early on that being the daughter meant playing a different game with different rules. If my brother got a C on a test, my mom would pat his shoulder and say, "He's doing his best." If I got an A-, she'd frown and ask, "Why not an A?" When he crashed his car at 19, Dad laughed. "Boys will be boys." When I missed curfew by 15 minutes, I got grounded for a week and a long lecture about reputation and how girls should behave. He was allowed to be messy, loud, immature. I had to be polished, quiet, obedient. He got praised for mediocrity. I got silence for achievements. I remember once I brought home an award from a statewide competition. I had worked on that project for months. I stood on stage, shaking, holding a plaque with my name on it. And when I showed it to them, they barely looked up from the TV. "That's nice," my mom said. That's it. But when my brother got his first unpaid internship, they threw a dinner, invited relatives, toasted to his bright future. It was like living in a world where I had to earn every breath I took, and he just existed. And somehow that was enough. So when that ultimatum came, when they told me I had to give him a part of my company, buy him a house, or be erased from the family, I wasn't surprised, just exhausted. Because this wasn't about fairness. This wasn't even about love. This was about control, about keeping their favorite child comfortable, no matter who they had to sacrifice. And now they expected me to reward him for years of entitlement, while they threatened to erase me from the family for refusing. It wasn't just painful, it was familiar. Too familiar. And that's when something in me finally snapped. Not with rage, but with clarity. I don't know what gave me the strength that day. Maybe it was years of silence finally catching fire, but I knew I couldn't let them bully me behind screens or through texts. I needed to look them in the eye. I needed them to see that the girl they used to dismiss had grown into a woman who was done playing along. So I drove to my parents' house, our so-called family home, the place where I had learned to shrink myself so my brother could shine. My heels echoed through the hallway like a drumbeat in my chest. I found them all in the living room. My dad reading the paper, my mom scrolling on her phone, and of course my brother lounging on the couch like royalty. I didn't sit down. I stood there, looked them dead in the eye, and said, "This isn't love. This is control." My mom blinked first. "Sweetheart, don't be dramatic. We just want what's fair." Fair. That word burned coming out of her mouth. Fair. I laughed, and my voice didn't crack this time. "You didn't help build my company. You didn't offer a dime when I slept in my car to avoid rent. You didn't even believe in me when I started. And now you want to carve out a piece of it for him like it's a pie you baked." My dad's tone shifted fast, his voice sharp. "Watch your tone. He's your brother. Family shares." "No," I said, steady and calm. "Family supports. They encourage. They don't blackmail with ultimatums." Then my brother spoke, and I swear I could have slapped the smirk off his face. "Wow, Nicole. Still making everything about you, huh? You were always the dramatic one." Dramatic. That word again. Like standing up for myself was some sort of performance. "You really think I owe you?" I asked him directly. "You've coasted your whole life on praise for showing up. I earned everything I have." "You're selfish," my mom snapped. "And if you walk away, don't bother coming back." And just like that, there it was. The mask dropped. I had spent my whole life trying to earn a version of love they were never willing to give. They only knew conditional love, the kind you have to buy, beg, or bend for. But I wasn't that little girl anymore. So I stood up taller, took one last look at the 3 people I once would have done anything to please, and said, "I won't be part of a family that only loves me when I'm convenient." Then I turned and walked out. Not angry, not broken, just free. That night, I sat in my apartment in complete silence. No music, no phone, just the soft hum of the city through my window and the heavy weight of everything that had just happened. I kept replaying every word from that confrontation. My mother's voice, sharp and bitter. My father's threat masked as family duty. My brother's smugness, as if everything I had created was just a toy he was finally ready to play with. It echoed in my head like a bad song on repeat. I looked around my office, which doubles as my safe space. The shelves stacked with product samples. My whiteboard filled with next quarter goals. The small frame on my desk with a picture of me, just 22 years old, holding up the keys to my first rented workspace. I stood there in ripped jeans and a $10 hoodie, grinning like I just won the lottery. Next to that was the receipt from my first sale. It was only $42, but I had laminated it like it was a check from a Fortune 500 client. And honestly, it meant more than any check ever could. It was proof that I started something, that I made something out of nothing. And yet, even surrounded by that evidence of growth, of effort, of my own damn brilliance, I felt it creeping in again. That stupid, invisible ache. I was still that little girl begging for their approval. No matter how far I'd come, a part of me still wanted to be told I'd done enough, that I made them proud, that they saw me, really saw me. And that realization, it broke me. Not in a loud, dramatic way. There were no screams or sobs, just a quiet cracking deep inside, like ice giving way beneath your feet. I curled up on my couch and let the tears fall, not out of weakness, but out of release. Because I finally accepted something I should have learned years ago. I didn't need their approval. I needed peace. I needed to stop chasing love with conditions. I needed to stop proving my worth to people who had already decided to ignore it. I needed to reclaim myself from their expectations, from their manipulations, from that twisted version of family they kept trying to sell me. I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and stared out into the night. The city lights blinked like stars trapped on Earth. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small under them. I felt steady. I felt real. And right then, I made a promise to myself. No more shrinking. No more silence. No more giving just to be tolerated. I was done letting anyone, even blood, dim the light. I nearly lost everything to ignite. The next morning, I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. It was like something in me had finally clicked. I wasn't going to plead anymore. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to protect what I built, and I was going to do it smart. First, I called my lawyer. I'd hired him once before when I was setting up my business. But this time, the call felt different. This wasn't just about legal advice. This was about reclaiming control, about securing everything I had spent years pouring my soul into. I want to tighten everything, I told him. Reinforce the structure, lock down the assets, revise ownership protections. And I want to set up a trust, effective immediately. He didn't ask questions. He just said, got it. Let's get to work. And we did. In the span of 1 week, I restructured every corner of my business, transferred critical holdings into a trust with my name as the sole beneficiary, updated my living will, removed my family from all fallback designations, and created backup plans within backup plans. My empire wasn't just secure, it was bulletproof now. They wouldn't get a single piece of it, not out of entitlement, not out of manipulation, not because of some twisted family duty. Not anymore. Then, once everything was in place, I sat down with a pen and a single sheet of paper. No emotion, no rants, just truth. I wrote, Mom, Dad, you made your choice, loud and clear. You chose to support a son who has never worked for anything over a daughter who bled, cried, and fought her way to stability. You gave me an ultimatum. And now I'm giving you my response. I will not hand over what I built. I will not reward entitlement. And I will not stay in a family that treats love like leverage. This isn't revenge. It's a boundary. Effective immediately, I'm stepping away. No contact. No drama. Just silence. Take care. I signed it, folded it, sealed the envelope, and mailed it. No message. No heads up. Just a clean, final goodbye tucked in a plain white envelope. There was something unbelievably freeing about it. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. I knew they'd read it. And for the first time, they'd realize that I wasn't bluffing, that their control over me had expired. When you stop reacting, people start listening. When you stop explaining, they panic. And when you stop giving them access to your peace, it hits different. I didn't post online. I didn't call anyone for validation. I simply moved forward. And the silence that followed, it was beautiful. No guilt texts. No fake apologies. Just the quiet that comes from burning a bridge you were never meant to cross again. I stood in my office that evening, barefoot, sipping coffee, staring at the framed quote on my wall. She remembered who she was. And the game changed. That was me now. No longer seeking permission. No longer shrinking. They gave me an ultimatum. I gave them consequences. And for once in my life, I felt powerful, not because I fought back, but because I walked away. I knew it would cause a stir. I just didn't expect how big the explosion would be. 3 days after I mailed the letter, the fallout began. First came the digital tantrum, from my brother, of course. He posted a dramatic rant on Facebook, the kind where he played the victim while pretending to take the high road. It started with, sometimes people forget who was there for them when they had nothing, and ended with, family should be about giving, not just taking. The irony? He had never given anything in his life but opinions no one asked for. I didn't comment. I didn't even open the comments. But a mutual friend screenshot it and sent it to me with a single line, "He's spiraling." Then came my mom. She called 4 times in 1 hour. When I didn't answer, she left a voicemail that started sweet, turned manipulative, and ended explosive. "Nicole, I raised you better than this. You're being cold. You're being selfish. Your brother is hurting, and all you can think about is yourself. Do you want to destroy this family? There it was again, love dressed up as guilt. I didn't respond. Instead, I got a message from my aunt. Then another from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Paragraphs upon paragraphs. Families fight, Nicole, but we don't throw each other away. You only get one mother, you know. This is just a phase. You'll come around. They all echoed the same chorus. Forget, fall back in line. But here's the thing no one seemed to understand. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was done. Done with being the bigger person while they acted small. Done with earning my place in a family that never offered me unconditional love. Done with being gaslit into thinking boundaries meant betrayal. So I stayed quiet until I didn't. One morning, while sipping my coffee outside my office, I asked my assistant to snap a quick photo. No makeup, no filters, just me, standing tall, soft smile, sun hitting my face. I posted it on my personal page with one caption, "Peace looks good on me." That was it. No backstory, no drama, but people got it. The likes rolled in. The comments poured. Old friends, clients, even strangers chimed in. Good for you. This kind of peace is earned. I felt this in my soul. It wasn't about going viral. It was about being seen. The internet, so often a cruel place, understood me better than my own family did. And maybe that's what hurt the most. That strangers could offer compassion, while the people who raised me only ever offered conditions. My brother? He deleted his post within hours. My mom? She texted, "So this is what you've become? A public embarrassment." I left her on read. Because yes, this is what I've become. A woman who no longer begs to be respected. A daughter who finally chose self-worth over silence. And while the group chats lit up and the whispers spread, I just kept living. No chaos. No retaliation. Just peace. That's what they never saw coming. Not the distance. Not the silence. The calm. Because I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. They thought cutting me off would destroy me. But it only revealed who I was without their noise, stronger, clearer whole. Let them gossip. Let them spin their narratives. I wasn't part of that story anymore. I was writing a new one, where I didn't have to fight to exist. And damn, felt good. Time has a strange way of softening edges. Months passed. The noise faded. The messages slowed. Eventually, the family group chat that once buzzed like a hornet's nest went silent. No more ultimatums. No more guilt trips. Just nothing. And for the first time in my life, that silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like freedom. I traveled. Places I'd dreamed of but never made time for. Italy, Bali, a little cabin in Vermont during the fall. I hiked mountains, ate alone in candlelit restaurants, laughed out loud at old rom-coms in hotel rooms. I stopped waiting for anyone else to say, "You've done well." I started saying it to myself. More than that, I found purpose in new places. I started mentoring young women, not with big speeches or business jargon, but by sitting across from them at worn cafe tables and saying, "You can start from nothing." I did. Some of them cried. Some of them brought notebooks full of ideas. All of them reminded me why I built my business in the first place, not just to prove something, but to build something that matters. And slowly, I stopped feeling like the daughter who'd been cast out. I became the woman who chose herself. One night, I was on a quiet balcony in Greece. Warm breeze, glass of wine, a soft jazz playlist in the background. I watched the sun dip below the sea and felt this calm come over me that I hadn't felt in years. That's when it hit me. I didn't just protect my company. I protected my soul. I drew a line and didn't cross it. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just walked away. And in doing that, I gave myself the kind of peace no one else ever offered me. As for my family, I wish them healing. I truly do. I hope one day they see how much damage entitlement and manipulation can cause. I hope my brother learns how to build something on his own. I hope my parents understand that love isn't measured by how well someone obeys, but by how well they're respected. But I won't be there to witness it, because some wounds don't need revenge. They just need distance. I don't stalk their social media. I don't ask about them. I don't carry bitterness in my chest. I just don't carry them at all anymore. My story didn't end the day they tried to cut me out. It began, and now I live it with clarity, joy, and a kind of strength I never knew I had. They tried to make me choose between my family and my worth. But in choosing myself, I didn't lose a family. I found me, and that was the best gift I ever gave myself. And there you have it, Nicole's journey from being torn apart by family expectations to finding her true self. It's a painful truth that sometimes the people we love can be the ones who hold us back the most. But it's also a powerful reminder that the only person we owe our happiness to is ourselves. Nicole could have stayed, could have apologized, could have played the role they wanted her to, but she chose peace over pain. She chose her own worth. And in doing so, she learned that the most freeing thing in life is realizing that you don't need anyone's approval but your own. Let this be a lesson to you all. Never let anyone dictate your value. You deserve the life you create, and if it means walking away from toxic people to build that life, then so be it. If you found inspiration in Nicole's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more empowering stories. And hey, drop a comment below. Have you ever had to choose your peace over family loyalty? How did you find the strength to do it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching. And remember, you're worth more than anyone's expectations. Keep choosing yourself. Married, I genuinely felt like my heart would burst with joy. Reina, he proposed, she squealed over the phone, her voice vibrating with happiness. And despite everything, our differences, our disagreements over the years, I meant it when I said, I'm so happy for you, Eva. Truly. I remember looking over at my daughter Lily, who was sitting at the kitchen island, dunking a cookie into her tea while doing homework. Aunt Eva's getting married, I told her with a grin. Her eyes lit up immediately. Do I get to be a bridesmaid? She asked, nearly dropping her cookie in excitement. I laughed. Maybe. We'll find out. Lily was 16. Sweet, intelligent, kind to her bones. She had that quiet confidence some kids only dream of having at her age. And she adored Eva. In her mind, Eva wasn't just her aunt. She was like a glamorous older sister. They had movie nights, late-night phone calls, even matching bracelets. So, in Lily's heart, being a part of Eva's wedding wasn't just a wish. It felt like something certain. A few days later, Eva invited me over for lunch to talk about the wedding plans. I showed up with a little bottle of champagne and a heart full of excitement. We laughed, we planned. She showed me her Pinterest board and swatches of pastel-colored bridesmaid dresses. Everything's going to be perfect, she said, her eyes dreamy. Then she cleared her throat. There's just one thing, Reina. I wanted to talk to you before the invites go out. Sure, I said, sipping my tea. I've decided I'm going to keep the guest list pretty adult. You know, grown-up vibes, cocktails, music, that kind of thing. So, I hope you're okay with Lily not being invited. I blinked. Wait, you're not inviting Lily. It's nothing personal, she said quickly, her smile tightening. I just think 16 is a little too young for the kind of wedding I'm envisioning. I felt my jaw clench. But she's family. She loves you. She was so excited. Reina, she interrupted, placing her hand over mine in a patronizing way. I need you to respect this decision. It's my day. My stomach dropped. I couldn't find words for a moment. All I could picture was Lily's face, how her eyes would fall when I told her, how she'd try to pretend it didn't bother her. I looked Eva straight in the eyes and said calmly, if my daughter isn't welcome, then we won't be coming. She blinked, caught off guard. Oh, well, that's your choice. I stood up, setting my tea down. It is. And just like that, I walked out, heart pounding, mind racing, not with rage, but with a quiet, deep ache I couldn't explain yet. But I would eventually. And so would the rest of the family. I tried to keep my composure when I got home. I didn't want Lily to see the sadness on my face the moment I walked through the door. But she could always read me like a book. Mom, is everything okay? She asked, setting down her headphones. I sat beside her on the couch and gently took her hand. Sweetheart, Aunt Eva doesn't want anyone under 18 at the wedding. She said it's going to be an adult-only event. She stared at me for a moment. Oh, she said softly. Okay, that's fine. She smiled, but it was forced. I saw the way her fingers curled into her hoodie sleeves. I knew my daughter. That wasn't fine. That was heartbreak disguised as indifference. You're not upset? I asked. She shrugged. It's her wedding. She can do what she wants. But later that night, when I walked past her room, I heard her voice low and cracked as she FaceTimed her best friend. She didn't even say it to me, you know? My own aunt. There was silence, then a broken laugh. I thought I'd be in her pictures. I was even going to buy those silver heels we saw. I closed the door quietly and sat in the hallway, heart aching. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about a 16-year-old girl realizing that love isn't always returned the way you give it. That sometimes the people you put on pedestals don't look back at you the same way. The next day, I called my mom to talk about it. I'm just really hurt, I said. Lily's crushed. I don't understand how Eva could think this was okay. My mother sighed. Raina, it's her big day. Don't make a scene over this. I'm not making a scene, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I just think. She's trying to have a sophisticated, grown-up wedding, she interrupted. You should support her, not make her feel guilty. Support her? I was expected to clap from the sidelines while my daughter was tossed aside like she didn't matter? I tried my brother next. Same reaction. Come on, Raina. It's just one day. Lily will survive. But that was the problem. No one was thinking about how it felt to be the only family member excluded. Not because she misbehaved. Not because she couldn't make it. But because she didn't fit some arbitrary grown-up vibe. I wasn't asking for much. Just a little compassion. But instead, I became the difficult one. The one who was overreacting and making it about herself. I even got a text from one of my aunts. You always have to stir the pot. Can't you let Eva enjoy her moment? Meanwhile, Lily became quiet. She stayed off social media. Stopped FaceTiming Eva. She didn't say much, but her energy had shifted. She began to shrink into herself like a flower wilting away from the sun. That's when I knew this wasn't just about a party. It was a message, intentional or not, that my daughter wasn't enough. Not cool enough. Not grown enough. Not valued. And that was something I couldn't ignore. They may have turned a blind eye, but I was wide awake. The wedding day came like a storm we saw brewing from miles away, but still weren't prepared for. Lily and I stayed home. Just the two of us, curled up on the couch with a bowl of popcorn and a movie neither of us paid attention to. Outside, it was just another sunny Saturday. But inside our little house, there was a weight in the air, like something sacred had been broken. The silence between us said more than words ever could. Then the notification started. My phone buzzed every few minutes with tagged photos, family group chats, and endless updates. Eva in her sparkling white dress, my mom in a seafoam green gown, my brother with his arms around his wife. Hashtag Evie ever after. Hashtag family forever. The irony hit me like a punch. Do you want to see them? I asked Lily gently. She didn't answer, just shook her head and tucked her knees tighter to her chest. She'd barely touched her popcorn. I glanced at the screen again. Photo after photo of my family laughing, toasting, dancing under fairy lights. A whole universe that Lily and I had been quietly cut out of. One photo made me stop cold. It was of all the nieces and nephews gathered together, holding sparklers with the caption, "The next generation!" All except Lily. She had literally been erased. That night, Lily didn't say much. She just went to her room early, claiming she had a headache. I waited a few minutes, then walked up quietly to check on her. Her door was open just enough for me to see her curled under the blanket, headphones in, her phone screen glowing as tears rolled down her cheeks. I backed away, heartbreaking, and sat on the stairs, clenching my fists. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a message. A reminder that you can love people with your whole heart and they'll still decide you don't fit their picture. The next day, I noticed her starting to pull away. Not dramatically, just subtle things. She stopped calling her cousins, ignored texts, deleted her Instagram. I saw the light in her dim, just a little more each day. I wanted to scream. At Eva. At my mother. At the whole damn family. Instead, I sat with Lily, trying to find ways to bring her back to herself. You know this doesn't mean anything about your worth, right? I told her one night, holding her hand across the kitchen table. Their choice says everything about them, not you. She nodded, but her eyes didn't quite believe me. And I realized something in that moment. This wasn't about a party or an invitation. It was about what people choose to prioritize. It was about a girl who had done nothing wrong being made to feel invisible by people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. It was about how casually we discard others when they don't fit the narrative we're building for ourselves. And maybe they thought it would all blow over, that we'd forgive, and pretend none of it mattered. That Lily would bounce back and I'd sweep the pain under the rug. But they didn't know me. And they definitely didn't know my daughter. Because while they were busy staging perfect photos for likes and comments, something inside me was shifting. Quietly, firmly. I wasn't planning a fight. I was planning something better. I didn't send a dramatic text or post some cryptic quote online. I didn't confront Eva or demand an apology. I simply stepped back. It started with brunch, a weekly tradition with my mom and aunts, filled with passive-aggressive compliments and forced laughter. I canceled. No excuse, just won't make it today. Then another Sunday came and went. And another. Eventually the text slowed. Then stopped. I left the family group chat quietly, not in a blaze of drama, but like a door that closes gently and doesn't reopen. No one asked why. Or maybe they noticed and chose not to. I didn't care. The truth is I was tired. Tired of pretending the weight in my chest was something I could ignore. Tired of showing up to people who wouldn't show up for us. So I gave all my energy to someone who deserved it. Lily. I started planning little Saturday adventures. Just the two of us. Farmers markets, art museums, coffee shops with poetry readings. Places that made her eyes light up again. Sometimes we didn't even do anything special. We just lay under blankets, binge-watching mystery shows. And that felt more honest than any family gathering ever had. I didn't need to explain my silence to anyone. If they didn't feel the absence of Lily at the wedding, they weren't going to feel our absence now. And still the texts came from time to time. You've been distant lately. Eva asked about you. You and Lily should come by. It wasn't personal, but it was personal. Maybe not to them, but definitely to my daughter. And that made it personal to me. I responded with polite but firm boundaries. No blame, no bitterness, just space. They'd made a choice. And now, so had I. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't hoping to be welcomed back. I was building a new reality where Lily and I weren't afterthoughts. I was reclaiming my peace. And in that silence, I found something powerful. Clarity. And maybe a little spark of something else. Something I'd been quietly planning. Something they never saw coming. Christmas was always Eva's thing. The big tree. The carefully curated matching pajamas. The themed dinner menus and choreographed photo ops. Every year, she transformed her house into a holiday movie set. And every year, the entire family dutifully showed up to play their parts. Except this year, I didn't. When Eva sent out the group message, Christmas dinner at ours. Same time, same sparkle. Can't wait to see everyone. I replied simply, thanks, but Lily and I already have plans. No drama. No explanation. Just a calm boundary. She didn't reply. Neither did anyone else. But I saw the read receipts, and that was enough. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning this Christmas since the night of her wedding. Not out of spite, but out of intention. I didn't want to spend another holiday being a prop in someone else's perfect picture. I wanted something real, something warm, something Lily would actually feel, not just pose for. So we stayed home and made our own magic. I let Lily plan the day however she wanted. We baked cookies from scratch, the kitchen turning into a beautiful mess of flour and laughter. We made hot cocoa with real whipped cream and cinnamon sticks. No rules, no schedules, no pretending. Then we curled up in our living room, where I'd strung up fairy lights and lit cinnamon-scented candles. The tree was small, but every ornament told a story, little pieces of us. Not matching, not perfect, but ours. Do you miss being there? I asked her softly as we sat beneath the lights, gifts still unopened under the tree. She shook her head, her eyes calm. Not even a little. And I believed her, but I still had one surprise left. while Lily played music and danced around in her socks. I brought out a box I've been keeping hidden in my closet for weeks. Inside was a simple hardcover scrapbook. I handed it to her, and she flipped it open with a puzzled smile. The first page was a picture of us from last Christmas, laughing with cookie dough on our noses. The next pages were filled with photos of our adventures over the past year. Quiet breakfasts, weekend art walks, silly selfies in mismatched pajamas. And on the final page, there was a note. You are not too young. You're not too small. You are not someone to be left out. You are everything. And no party, no photo, no event will ever define your worth. I see you. I love you. Always. She didn't cry. She just hugged me hard and whispered, "This is the best Christmas I've ever had." And that's when I knew we weren't missing out on anything. They were. Because while Eva was toasting with her crystal glasses and snapping another perfect photo, I was here in the glow of something real. And just when I thought the day couldn't get better, the text started rolling in. "You're really not coming? You sure Lily doesn't want to open gifts with her cousins?" Even Eva messaged, "It's not the same without you." I smiled at my phone and placed it face down on the table. Because this year, we didn't need to be anywhere we weren't wanted before. And next year? Well, they'd remember the silence. Because it wasn't absence. It was presence louder than any words. I hadn't planned on sharing any photos. Honestly, it wasn't about showing off or proving a point. But sometimes the most beautiful moments demand to be witnessed. Our little Christmas gathering had grown into something more than just a quiet day with Lily. I'd reached out to a few people, ones who, like us, had often been left out or overlooked by the louder voices in the family. My cousin Mina, whose kids never got much attention because they weren't picture perfect. Uncle Raj, who had long since stopped coming to family events after Eva started treating him like furniture. Even sweet Aunt Dolly, who always brought gifts but never got one in return. They all came, shy at first, unsure why they'd been invited. I smiled as I welcomed each of them at the door. Because you matter, and you deserve a Christmas where that's felt. We filled my small home with laughter, warmth, and dishes brought from each person's kitchen. Nothing matched. Nothing was coordinated. But everything was real. Lily was glowing, surrounded by other kids who weren't judged or silenced. They played board games on the living room floor, decorated cookies with messy joy, and sang songs that didn't need auto-tune or applause. At one point, Aunt Dolly leaned in and whispered, This is what it used to feel like long ago, before all the performance. I snapped a photo then, her smile, the crinkles around her eyes, the plate of cookies in her lap, and posted it on my private social media with a caption that simply read, "A different kind of Christmas, the kind that feels like home." I didn't tag anyone, didn't mention Eva, didn't need to, but you know how families are. The pictures began to ripple through the grapevine. People started sharing them, commenting things like, "Wish we were there," and "Looks like you all had so much fun." I saw screenshots floating into the family group chat I'd left. Apparently the contrast was striking. Their matching pajamas and picture-perfect backdrop looked sterile next to our chaos-filled, heartwarming evening. Eva's photos had the polish. Mine had the soul. And slowly the silence broke. I got a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "You reminded me what holidays are supposed to be. Mind if we join next year?" Another message from someone I barely knew but had seen at family weddings. "I always felt like I didn't belong. Your post made me cry. Thank you for that." Even my own brother, who had been Eva's little shadow most of his life, messaged, "Your dinner looked amazing." Eva was kind of tense all evening. I think she noticed. Oh, I was sure she did. Because for once, the spotlight wasn't on her carefully curated life. It was on the people she forgot. The ones she never thought were worthy of inclusion. And all I had done was open my door to them. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to shout or shame or confront. I just needed to create space for the people who had been quietly aching. And let the photos speak for themselves. It didn't take long for the storm to hit. 2 days after Christmas, Eva called me. Not texted, called. I stared at the screen as it rang, her name glowing like a warning sign. And against my better judgment, I picked up. Her voice was sharp, coated in sugar but laced with fury. So, what exactly was that little Christmas stunt about? I stayed calm. It wasn't a stunt. It was Christmas, with people who've been left out one too many times. You're dividing the family, Reina, she hissed. Do you know how many people were talking about you? Sharing your photos like you're some kind of saint. I didn't divide the family, Eva, I replied. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. That's when she lost it. You're bitter because Lily didn't get invited to the wedding. That's what this is really about. You're twisting everything and making me look like a villain. I didn't yell. I didn't defend. I don't need to make you look like anything, Eva. People see what they see. Maybe it's time you asked why. She hung up, but the silence didn't follow, because once that phone call ended, the real unraveling began. Apparently, Eva hadn't realized how many people in the family had been simmering with unspoken resentment. My dinner had been the spark, but the fire had been smoldering for years. Group chats exploded. My cousin Neha finally said it out loud. Remember when Eva made fun of my son's stutter during that reunion? And everyone laughed? He cried the whole way home. Aunt Dolly added, I haven't had a Christmas gift with my name on it in 15 years. Even my brother, the golden boy of the family, confessed. She uninvited my wife from the baby shower because her style didn't fit the vibe. I never said anything, but it always hurt. More messages poured in. People remembering times they'd been overlooked, excluded, made to feel small, all for not fitting Eva's image of perfection. And suddenly, the family's golden girl wasn't so golden anymore. Eva tried to salvage it, of course. She posted a long, syrupy caption on Instagram with a slideshow of her Christmas dinner. Family is everything. Grateful for another perfect holiday surrounded by love. But the comments told a different story. I guess not all the family was there, huh? Real love doesn't exclude. Wish I'd been at Reina's house instead. Her mask was cracking, and for once no amount of forced smiles or pastel filters could hold it together. She tried messaging relatives privately, spinning her version of events. But too many people had seen the truth now. And once people feel seen, they don't go back to being invisible. One by one, the facade collapsed. My parents, who had always blindly backed Eva, called me that evening. At first, they tried to guilt me. You didn't even show up. You could have caused a real scene if you had. But I could hear the unease in their voices. I wasn't the problem anymore. The problem was how long they'd ignored the actual one. And now the entire family knew it. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just said, maybe this Christmas was exactly what needed to happen. They didn't know how to respond, because the truth was finally louder than their excuses. And the woman they once dismissed for being too sensitive, she'd quietly pulled the thread, and the whole tapestry of pretense had come undone. I stood at the kitchen sink days after New Year's, rinsing the last of the dessert trays from our Christmas dinner. Outside the window, Lily and two of the younger cousins were building a lopsided snowman, laughing so hard they could barely pack the snow straight. That sound, that laughter, was everything. No filter, no spotlight, no performance, just joy. I didn't throw a fit when Eva banned my daughter from her wedding. I didn't start a war or beg to be included. I didn't try to argue with people who'd already decided who mattered and who didn't. I just chose a different path. I protected Lily, even when the world told me I was overreacting. I gave her space to hurt, and then I gave her space to heal. I reminded her that her worth isn't determined by an invitation or a seat at someone else's table. Instead, we built our own table. And when I quietly opened that door to the overlooked and the forgotten, when I welcomed them with no expectations, no obligations, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. This wasn't about revenge. It never really was. It was about clarity. Because when people show you who they are, when they make it clear you're only valuable if you fit their mold, you don't have to fight them. You just stop playing along. Let them keep their cold elegance and curated perfection. Let them sit in rooms where only certain people are allowed in. I'll take messy joy over manufactured beauty any day. And as for Eva, I didn't need an apology from her. The truth had found its way out, louder than I ever could have shouted it. And honestly, the silence that followed said more than any apology ever could. That Christmas didn't just change the family. It changed me. I'm no longer the woman who waits for others to include me. I'm the woman who makes her own circle and fills it with light. As I dried my hands and looked back out at Lily, she caught me watching and waved, her cheeks pink with cold, eyes full of life again. That wave, that smile, that was my closure. That was my quiet victory. And it was enough.